Um, whew, yeah, that's a good one. So when I was younger, the story that everybody would tell when they introduced me to people was, she's the girl from Africa. That was the thing that was the first note of like the bullet points. But now I think usually what people say is she's a social engineer and she won this competition at DEF CON. That seems to be like the top bullet on my highlight reel at the moment. So that competition actually happened in 2019, and I feel like that was like the front bookend on like this journey into information security. Not really like in movies there's that like pivotal moment where there's like massive success, and like that wasn't that moment for me. I feel like that's still coming, but it was one of those things that kind of catapulted me into like the Twitter infosec community as somebody that was recognizable by name. Kudos to my parents for the super unique name, because a lot of people assumed it was a handle. Really. And I'm like, nope, that's my legal name. I didn't really think this through, and I had my actual name as my handle for like job resume reasons, and didn't change it before I did the competition at DEF CON. And it was like, well, then I guess I'm known. But I feel like it's worked out because it's unique enough that folks generally recognize. It's not like a common American, I don't think it's even a common name around the globe, because I think I've found like 3 other me's. Yes, right. I mean, there was so much pain as a child because my brothers all got their own magnet and mine was like super kid. So I say this, and people have given me crap in the Reddit comments about not giving examples. But I've been a little bit of a manipulative kid, tiny bit, since I was small. I'm the oldest. I was born and raised in Africa. I lived there until I was 9, and then I spent a few years in the United States. And during that time, I was pretty loosely supervised. I'm trying to be kind to my mom, who was preoccupied being a student. Um, but I mean, I had a lot of freedom. It was a different time. The mid 90s were a lot safer in California. And it was like I had an opportunity to kind of create my own destiny. There were really no guardrails. And being the oldest and having to kind of grow up uh, quickly, I took responsibility for a lot of the organizational administrative stuff that was happening inside the family. But at the same time, I figured out things like I was 5'8" in 5th grade. So when I was 10, 11, I was 5'8" already. And so people generally thought I was older than I was. So when I was 10 or 11, they thought I was 16 or 17 at the minimum, because I'm so tall. And so I managed to convince the owner of a videotape rental store to give me an account in my name. I was able to rent movies, and I would bring them back responsibly and be kind and rewind and all that good stuff. So it wasn't like I was doing anything that was underhanded or manipulative or destructive, but I used these powers of influence from an early age to get what I wanted. For example, when I was living with my father later, after I left California at 13, I went back to live in South Africa with my dad. And he was a professor at a university, still is. And he had a visiting professor from the United States that came to visit South Africa. And as a courtesy, he wanted to show him around South Africa. And on the weekends, we went to this flea market, the whole family with this visiting professor. And we're standing in front of this table of CDs. And this is the late 90s, so CDs were cool. And they're like all laid out in front of us. And he's looking at all these CDs like, oh, this is cute. And I'm like, yeah, I really like that band. And I just stopped talking. And he's like, oh, which one? And I'm like, the Soundgarden. They're really cool. And I just stopped talking. And he goes, well, do you want me to buy that CD for you? And I was like, oh, wow, that would be so amazing. And I let him do it. And it was like, score. And it's like a, $20 expense. It wasn't anything large, but my parents were so ticked off at me that I'd allowed this guy to buy me a CD and manipulated him to do it. Like I hadn't refused the gift. So they made me write this like thank you note and then repay him with a $20 bill, which in South Africa is not super easy to come by. So I had to send him this $20 back. And it was like a lesson in not being a total craphead. But I don't think I learned it still at that point. And so it's one of those things where, like, as far as social engineering is concerned, I had figured out how to make grown-ups do the things I wanted them to do. And I'd been manipulating my mom to let me stay home from school. And, she didn't put up a really big fight, but, I'd manipulated teachers to do stuff. And I see this in my kids now where I just had parent teacher conferences yesterday. And so one of the teachers was talking about one of my children and she says, they don't like doing the schoolwork, but they're very sweet. And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, every time I ask them to do an assignment, they, tell me how much they love being in the class and how much they like me. And I just sat there and I'm like, that's a manipulator. And the teacher's just like, what? And I'm like, yeah, that's just them trying to get out of doing the assignment. She's like, well, I know, but like, I'm curious as to why you're acknowledging that and throwing your own kid under the bus. But it's just, I think we all learn as children how to get around certain things and how to be little con artists. I just didn't ever stop. And so in high school, I was ditching classes. In high school, I would cry to get out of physical education because I just didn't enjoy changing into athletic clothes in the winter. I found it to be quite annoying. And when you're already wearing a school uniform, it's like, why? So I would write my own notes and sign them as my dad. And I would cry to get out of PE. Like, I'm just so stressed out right now with schoolwork and my parents are putting so much pressure on me. And the teacher's just like, go sit down. Like, I don't want to deal with this nightmare. But I just kind of never quit. And it really got me into a ton of trouble as far as like school and parents were concerned. My dad and my stepmom did not have an easy time with me. So when I went to college, it was like, holy cow, I've got all this freedom. Like, I don't even have to go to class. This is amazing. And so I ended up dropping out and moving back to the States in 2021. So I arrived here in the United States with 2 suitcases with clothes and various knickknacks and $200 to my name. And I moved in with my mom for a while before I could get my own car and my first apartment, which was horrible. And just kind of like built everything from the ground up, and had to get creative with, the relationships that I made, the people that I befriended, the jobs that I was able to get were all purely through networking with the right people. I did start out working at a pet store for minimum wage. And when you're a snotty, self-absorbed, narcissistic 19-year-old kid who was pretty much told you would be a doctor or a lawyer or something important, and there was no universe where you considered that you wouldn't have a college degree when you left college, it was extremely humbling. But it was also amazing because it gave me this crash course in just peopling, because you're dealing with the public. I had a woman throw a dead bird at me. Like, customer service is like
Wow.
trial by fire. And so she wanted to return the bird in like a week. And we're like, but you killed it. do you want me to do here?
This sounds very much like a Monty Python
Oh
sketch.
my gosh, it's insane. Dealing with the public is absolutely bonkers. So anyway, we I went from working in this little shopping center and just like this little microcosm of different shops and people and the relationships between stores and employees and all of that stuff. And then I moved into title insurance because a friend of mine got a job as a typist. And I was like, well, I just want to work with my friend. I don't even understand what title and escrow is, but it sounds like it's for me. so, so yeah, I have this, random research and then telecommunications and then more title insurance and management. And then I switched into working for a startup that did automotive CRM software and then had a pet project that was a competitor to Instagram. And of course, Facebook bought Instagram. So we all know how that turned out. But I was there like social media manager before people even acknowledged that social media management was a real job. And I did all of the user support, all of the like knowledge base for users, and then engaged the dev team anytime I needed to work through like troubleshooting and stuff like that for the app. And then they moved me over into the CRM side, and I started doing that for all of the CRM clients and users. And if you've ever had to like social engineer a used car salesperson, like good luck because they know all your tactics. They're like, sure. When you're like, well, I can't reproduce it over here. So, but after that, I mean, I was like 3 help desk migrations in to this role. And it was like I had a recruiter that approached me saying, hey, somebody who used to work where you work said that you might be the right person for this job. And I was like, well, what is it? They're like, oh, it's market intelligence. It's a lot of research. And I'm like, marketing intelligence? They're like, no, market. Like you will research geographical locations for staffing and like job candidate type related things. And I was like, this sounds like it's completely not me, but I mean, I guess we'll do the interview. Um, and so I did the interview and I just completely clicked with the director who was running the group. And she's just incredible, super smart. And she had me come on to the team as the online content professional. And so I was essentially supposed to take all of the staffing company's research, and they're like a global multi-billion-dollar staffing company, all of their research, and then like create articles that were accessible to just anyone who was reading it, make it very non-scientific, and then help them boost their social media and online blog type presence with this thought leadership, which is kind of like a dirty word in InfoSec, but at the time that was the goal. So I started working there. And from the time I started to the time that I left, it was about 5.5 years. And over that time, I went from being just a writer to an analyst to a consultant and then managing the consulting group. And then my manager moved up to like a VP role, and they were wanting to put me into the director role, but they wanted me to have all kinds of travel requirements, and it was consulting, which I liked, but it wasn't necessarily what I was interested in pursuing as like a lifetime career. And you're going, yeah, but at this point, like you've had 20 years work experience. Aren't you already in like your lifetime careers and that's it? And I had competed at DEF CON the year before and won the social engineering capture the flag and been honored with the black badge from DEF CON. And I just was like completely consumed by this idea of working in information security. And at the time, I thought, I want to do social engineering assessments, I want to do security awareness training and education. And this was where my skills were at the time. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And so I started applying for all these jobs in information security, and all these people reviewing my resume were going, huh? Like it says you have a black badge here, but none of this job experience makes sense. Like none of it. like, aren't you a pen tester? And I was like, no. Like, at the time, I didn't have any of those, more technical pen testing skills, like zero. And so I was like, oh no, this is bad. Like, I don't know how to close this gap. So I started consulting on my own with the blessing of my boss. She's like, yeah, it doesn't conflict with anything we're doing. Like, have at it. And so I started doing like the random security awareness training here and there. And I would go to, local businesses in this Northern California area and present trainings and then do phishing tests for them. And it was really fun to get out there and get to do it. But it was also something that kind of consumed so much of my time because I was having to market the stuff, sell the stuff, show up and do the stuff, write the reports, send the reports, bill it, and then, chase down invoices and essentially do everything. And it was super just impossible for me to see how I could do this at a volume that would allow me to do it full time. And so I ended up meeting someone on Twitter who was using an alias Twitter account, just like not even their real name. And they're like, hey, I saw you're looking for a job. Did you have any idea what you want to do? And I'm like, honestly, no, I don't know what I want to do because I feel like I'm standing in the middle of a video store and I'm reading the backs of all the DVDs, which are like all the jobs in information security, right? And you flip over the back cover and it's like this description of a job, but it doesn't actually tell you what the job is about. It's just like the fluffy stuff that is what they're trying to use to get you to rent the movie, but it doesn't actually tell you what you need to know or what you're going to be doing every day or what that's like. And so I was like, I really have no idea what I want to do. And they're like, well, we might have an opportunity here for consultants. If you're still interested in consulting, it would just be like shifting from staffing company and market intelligence and telling giant Fortune 100s where to put their next call center to telling smaller infrastructure and critical infrastructure related organizations where to improve their security programs. And I'm like, I can point out all the mistakes people are making. Like, that's my favorite thing to do. So they offered me a job as a consultant, and I started working at Critical Insight at the end of 2020. And I was like, within 2 or 3 weeks, I'm like, it really is just consulting. Like, it's all the same. Consulting is consulting is consulting. Does not matter what industry you're in. It's just a different subject matter. And so I spent about 18 months there, and I did HIPAA, SRAs, and ISO assessments, and started doing the early versions of the CMMC assessments and helping hospitals and cities and counties prepare for Armageddon and get their security programs in order. And if they didn't have security programs or they didn't have the budget or the funding to stand one up or the resources, I could come in and talk about adequate staffing and allocating budget for certain things and help them to basically, I was like the anger translator for the IT and the security folks, which sometimes were one person who was IT and security combined. And I would help them to describe to their leadership what they needed and then validate that, which is really social engineering when you think about it, because I'm saying, yes, what they told you they need, that's actually what they need. And you're going to give it to them. And that's what this report says. And so it was really rewarding to feel like I was helping those people have a voice within their organizations, helping hospital IT administrators get their, proper resourcing and have the, foot to stand on to say we need to start doing tracking of our devices and better management of our, mobile devices and iPads and tablets and things. And just that very like ground layer of stuff that we all think is very basic is what a lot of these organizations are just grappling with starting and having it remain a consistent process within the organization. And so for me, that was eye-opening. And it felt like we were really doing something meaningful But what I learned in that process was I'm a heck of a lot more enthusiastic about breaking stuff. And so I had an opportunity to join Bishop Fox within the last few months. And they offered me a position on their red team as sort of their social engineering focused individual. And the way I describe it to my mom is if you've ever seen that show Leverage, I'm the grifter. Like I am not the super like technical computer hacking person. Like I have to make that clear to my family because they're like, "Can you fix my printer?" No, no, I cannot. I hack people. But I mean, I probably could, but no.
There's quite a lot to unpack there. Obviously, that's a great whistle-stop tour of your career there. I'm just thinking, the kind of the roles you've gone into. There's a lot of things you sort of went through there, from peopling in retail, getting CDs as a child, through, I'm trying to be polite, but manipulating adults in those
Oh yeah, no,
situations,
it's fine.
and then going on to do the market analysis, and probably I'm thinking that leads into some of the open source intelligence gathering, and then you
Mhm.
just sort of casually dropped in there. You'd won a DEF CON competition as well. I'm just interested, what are some of the key skills you think you picked up along that journey, and some of the things you learned in those roles that weren't necessarily directly social engineering roles, but they've then been applied in your current role and career path?
Well, I feel like reconnaissance in social engineering is the thing that gets skipped over quite a lot when we talk about, behavioral analysis and microfacial expressions and all of those things. Those are important if you're reading people, sure. But if you're not prepared when you walk into a social engineering engagement or make that phone call with the information to back up your pretext, you'll probably have a tough time, if not fail, in most cases. So, as far as reconnaissance is concerned, I started at that title company when I was 19. And very early on, I was doing like database entry of the documents that were recorded at the county to transact property. And so, learning about public record, how to search it, what the documents did, like their actual effect on the property, what that type of document would do to the title or to, liens, easements, all that stuff. That was all stuff that I was learning pretty early on. Maps, how to read maps, what the different types of maps meant, if they'd split the property, if they were just mapping what was there, those kind of things. And so that love of research, that started really early on for me. And so, I mean, even in high school, I liked digging into stuff and, finding out more information on things. And the internet was like sort of new at the time. So it was like a little bit more difficult back then. But after working in the title company, then I moved on to telecommunications. And I was essentially a narc. I was the inventory manager and the person who made sure that all of the sales reps were coding transactions properly and not stealing and all that kind of stuff. So I had I had like I had many complaints and grievances filed against me, and I'd have to like show up and like explain myself with the sales rep and their union rep, and I'd be like, "Look, here's the pattern of behavior. These are all the things you coded wrong. I'm not picking on you. You're just doing it wrong." And so having the ability to kind of put together like an investigation was super fun. And that really helps now when I'm trying to do reconnaissance against a company and figure out who the employees are, figure out what their job titles are, what types of software they use, applications that they're using, things that I could use to pretext as that would get their attention and, you know, encourage them to click on something. And kind of going back to that influence and encouragement to take action, while I was working for the automotive CRM uh, software company, they also started offering PPC or pay per click marketing and SEM, search engine marketing, to their dealership clients. So I was managing like $10,000 and up spend per dealership and doing all their pay per click ads. And I had a baby, and then within a month got AdWords and Bing Ads certified. And I took like 3 days off for maternity leave because that's startup life. And so I was doing all of this work to learn how to put together really engaging, very short, uh, pay-per-click ads, and linking those to the best place to get the person to actually follow that call to action, order the thing, book the meeting, see the car, drive the car, that kind of thing. And so that work really helped when it came to figuring out how to craft an email that would be an excellent fish. Because if you think about it, phishing emails are very similar to when you're learning how to craft an email for marketing purposes. You want someone to take action, you want them to see the value in taking action based on your call to action, and you want to give them the opportunity to do so at many places within that email. And so that really helped me, writing blogs, doing search engine marketing, doing email marketing campaigns, and the pay-per-click marketing, all are skills that I use today. So the research from title and telecom, the marketing skills from automotive CRM and photo sharing application land, and then this market intelligence job used all of those skills to look at workforce markets and go, yes, there are enough people that live in this geographical area who have these skills to do this job, and it's most cost efficient in this market as opposed to that market. And putting together the story for my clients built up the consulting skills as well. That and like all the PowerPoint and Excel. I mean, you cannot get away from PowerPoint ever.
No.
In consulting. It just never ends. But yeah, everybody was like, information security is amazing. You're going to get to do all this ponage. And I'm like, nope, just over here in the Excel spreadsheets, losing my mind. So yeah, I think that even though it seems like all these things are super disconnected, all of these skills were 100% transferable between these different roles. Whew, this is my favorite question to answer now. So, when I started working towards a job as a social engineer, I thought you could get a job as a social engineer. And that is something that I think a lot of people also have the belief that you can get hired exclusively as a social engineer. And I have at least 2 or 3 people approach me every week asking how to do that. And the quick answer is you can't. Um, this is something that is more like a tool to use in a job rather than a job title. So, in the job that I had previously, where I was doing security assessments primarily, focused on that prevention part of information security, I was using those social engineering skills, but to elicit information from the IT and the security team. I wanted to know all their pain points. I wanted to know what they thought they needed. And a lot of consulting is just listening to your client, reforming what they say, and telling it back to them so that they can then share it with other people who can actually have decision making power and improve the situation. And prior to that, when I was working at the staffing company, we did engagements that were similar to like Undercover Boss, where we would send someone in to a client's organization as a new employee, and we would have them elicit information from other employees about what they liked, what they didn't like, benefits, why they were staying on board, company culture, just things that their boss couldn't ask them and get an honest answer, as opposed to like relying on surveys and things like that. Or I would set up calls and it would be very transparent, where it would be like, hey, we have a problem retaining our contractors. Our full-time employees seem super happy, but our contractors don't seem satisfied, and we seem to have high turnover on that side of stuff. Can you figure out why? So I would go in and I would talk to, 20 or 30 of their full-time employees, and then I'd go talk to 20 or 30 of their contractors, and they would tell me like the onboarding was super complex. I didn't feel like I understood what was going on. And those social engineering skills were coming out in leading that person and influencing them to tell me the truth about how they really felt about working there. Um, what I tell most people who ask me where they can get a job doing social engineering and information security is look at any job title that has sales in it because you will make a ton more money and you have the opportunity to earn commission and you have the opportunity to use social engineering skills on every single call you set with potential clients and repeat clients. And that is really where the money is in information security if you want to use social engineering skills. And I know individuals who are making upwards of $350,000 doing that every year, which is bananas money. So as far as like, how do I get a job being a social engineer? There are many, many, many jobs that you can do that will use social engineering skills. But social engineering is a very small part of what I do even today. It is a technique rather than a job title. And so, whether it's in the context of security assessments or a red team engagement where I am actually phishing someone, I would say that the focus needs to be on figuring out what job you want to do within the information security ecosphere, and then figuring out what skills you have that are transferable into that role and where the gap is. Look at a bunch of job descriptions and see where your gaps are in the requirements, but know that you probably don't have to meet every single one of those requirements. If you've got a good 60, 70% of the skills in the job requirements and you're just like a little, confused on or not having one or two items that are maybe more application specific, that's ground you can make up. But as far as getting a job in social engineering, it's going to be pretty tough. I seriously socially engineered my way into this role, and I legitimately expect someone to like figure out that I'm not supposed to be here and escort me from the building any moment. Yeah, they're like, no more access for you. Bye. But the jobs that I have had in the past few years have all come out of networking with people and making friendships and fostering those relationships and getting involved in the community. You can say what you want about information security conferences, but they are a great opportunity to meet people who are interested in the same things you are, learn from them, find yourself in a restaurant till 2 a.m. talking about new ideas and things that you want to do and all that fun stuff. Talks and all that stuff is great, but I think the thing I missed the most during the pandemic was just those organic conversations that popped up at conferences when people are just shooting the breeze and hanging out, and those relationships that you create with people can lead them to recommend you for certain roles. Like my first information security job came out of a friendship with an alias Twitter account. My second information security job came out of an introduction from a very well respected individual in the community to Bishop Box and the folks that were in charge of hiring for the red team there. And the opportunity that I had to go and train individuals and contractors for the special operations unit of the United States Army came out of the Darknet Diaries podcasts and a couple of the contractors who'd heard the podcast and reached out to me on Instagram. So I read all of my like super filtered, like could be spam, scary DMs after that, because you never know what opportunities are out there. And for me, it's been incredible the opportunities that I've had that have come out of doing and participating in a variety of different types of CTFs, the OSINT CTF with Trace Labs, for example.
So on the the flip side of those friendships that you've got, so obviously you've met people in the community, you've got great friendships there. It's introduced you to new opportunities. When you're actually doing competitions or social engineering engagements, you're obviously doing a lot of open source intelligence research, sort of social engineering, working out, for want of a better term, how to use people to get information. Do you find that that is emotionally draining because you're almost mentally forming a friendship by getting to know all these things about a person, what their job is, what their life's like, to then go and extract some information that's then used to write a report or win a competition?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I tell people all the time, like, I feel bad and they think it's a joke, but I feel like crap afterward because I'm more of an empath as far as the way that I connect with people. And I'm also very introverted. So for me to like engage with people for like an entire day is super draining. So when I'm doing an engagement, it's kind of like you're at like maximum anxiety and awareness of the situation. You're on high alert for like potential ways that this could go wrong, threats, things like that. And so it's really tough to be on like high alert for an entire day. But yeah, I do the reconnaissance. I learn about the people, and then I have to figure out how to build rapport with them. And the thing is, I try really hard not to lie when it comes to building those relationships because people can tell when you're being false about what you're interested in, what you're engaged in. And this happened to me even at a conference one time. I had been walking around this conference for 2 or 3 days already. And I ran into someone who was um, they were working in one of the vendor booths. They recognized me and I knew that I knew them. And we started talking and they said something about their kids. And I said, "Oh, really? Wow, that's cool." And they were like, I have kids. Like, you follow me on Instagram. And they could tell that I wasn't actually like super engaged in the conversation. And really, what it boiled down to was I was absolutely exhausted. And it was really tough for me to because I just have like naturally resting bitch face. So I have to like put effort into like looking friendly. And so it's like I felt bad because I was like I'm not trying to be disrespectful or, dismissive, and I know it came off that way, but I'm just so tired of engaging with people. It's not you, it's been 3 days at DEF CON and I'm worn out. And so I felt really bad about that. And I was like, I just need to stop talking to people for a while. Like, I need to take a minute and like go decompress. And I felt really bad about it. And I still feel bad about it. And it's been years and it stuck out in my memory. So yeah, it is tough because I will talk to people about things that matter to me. And I genuinely try to build a friendship and they genuinely connect back to that. And so then when I extort them or influence them or manipulate them to do something, it just feels like I'm betraying them. And that really does suck. And so for a long time, I was like, okay, I'm done. I had like a few engagements at my previous um, at my previous role where I was doing purely vishing. And so I was doing a lot of assessments, but about like 20%, 25% of what I was doing was social engineering, actual phishing, but more blue team focus. Like, I don't know how to explain that in a great way, but it was less red team, like black box, go figure everything out yourself, and more, we'll give you all the contacts. We're going to do this as a regular program and then do reporting and metrics and all that junk. So I was doing those things, and I had a medical research facility that wanted me to socially engineer over the phone their HR help desk and their IT help desk personnel. I was to just call the number for the help desk, and whoever answered would be the person I was socially engineering. So I didn't have an opportunity to do a ton of research on them. But what I decided was I was going to send the IT support people to just a, error 404 page to prove that I could get them to go to a link, like type it into their browser, and then view a page. And as long as they could say to me, oh, yeah, I am seeing just an error, like a 404, and have them confirm that, then I would know, yes, they went there. But my job wasn't to be malicious or to actually, get access to their system or do anything that was going to connect back to them or anything like that. Plus, I had like 2 weeks to test these people, and I didn't want anyone to like recognize the pattern or for there to be anything like you've been pwned like pop up on their page, because then I'd be blown for the rest of the engagement. So I was calling these tier one, like the lowest level of entry help desk support individuals, the folks that reset passwords and help people figure out how to get into their email and that kind of stuff. And I would just call, pretend to be an idiot, and ask them to go to this link. And I'd registered a domain that was, their company domain, but instead of .org, it was .us. And so they would just go. And after about, I think the 10th or 11th person that I talked into going to the link, and I can still say that when I have given a link over the phone, 0 people have ever told me no. To date. That includes the competition at DEF CON, that includes everything ever. But after about the 10th or 11th one, I was like, oh my gosh, I just feel like I'm clubbing baby seals. Make it stop. And so I asked the point of contact at the company, I was like, I think we have a broad enough sample of individuals to put together a report, and can I please stop now? And they're like, well, is it safe to say that no one fell for the ruse? And I'm like, well, I think we should probably schedule a call. So it's tough. It's really tough because, just as an aside, for the client, they want me to fail. But there's a caveat to that, because if I do fail, then they're like, what kind of pen testing company did we hire? They suck. Like, what? And so it's like we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. If we don't have any success, then they think that they've hired an inferior company to test them. And so, I mean, it's very rare to have a no findings report, but it does happen. And in that case, they're like, something feels weird here. Did you actually do something? And then on the converse side, they're like, if we have all this failure from our user side, like, whew, that's tough for them to like stomach. And a lot of times you have the point of contacts at the company are the people that you're embarrassing. Even though they're not the ones that ordered the pen test, they're not signing the check to pay the consulting firm that did the test. They're the ones that are going to have their program picked apart if they're, found to have any findings, especially if they're critical findings. So it's this like, we got to find something, but we don't want to find nothing, but we don't want to find too much, because then we look like jerks. Not that we would like ever sandbag ourselves, but at the same time, it's rough. So I had a gig recently where we're dealing with point of contacts within the company who are in charge of the security program. They did not order this pen test. They are not interested in the findings because they just want a glowing report, because they're only doing this for annual compliance reasons. They're not doing this because they genuinely want, you know? And so I crafted an email pretext that leaned heavily on the promise of a new job at a competing company for more money. And I sent this pretext, which is something, it's super common that you could receive an email in your inbox that claims to be a notification that you got a direct message on LinkedIn saying that there could be a great job opportunity for you here. Very common. LinkedIn is one of the most common pretexts used by the real life scammers that are attempting to get your monies. So I was like, this is good. Like, majority of these people that they want me to target are on LinkedIn. They all have connections there. Like, this makes sense. They're on LinkedIn. This is a valid competitor. These are the actual salaries of these roles at the competing company, which were, I was like, who's making this kind of money? This is insane. So I put together a real job description in a Word document that was a legitimate job description from this company I was pretending to recruit for. And then I had a part of my team craft a website to have this careers page with this Word document on it available for download through a button. And it looked so good. It was like spot on the careers page of this company that we were pretending was looking for a new head of whatever. And so I crafted the email, wrote the email template. It looked just like a LinkedIn message notification. It was just spot on, and had a link to this page that had the Word document in it. It was so good. There was no way I thought that this would not be super successful. So we schedule the campaign, we send it out, and usually within the first 15 minutes, there will be a click, at least one click. And it's kind of a two-stage fish. So they have to click on the email, go to the website, and then click on the button and download this Word document. And that's what we're testing to see is, will they click the link in the email? And then secondly, would they download something from a website? Not particularly malicious. We're just measuring whether or not they would do it. And so we wait, and we wait some more, and we wait some more. And I'm like, did it get there? Because nobody's clicking on it. And it was like, this was the first time I had ever not gotten one click, ever. And I'm like, well, crap, guys, let's pack up the black badge and take it back to DEF CON because I clearly suck at this. Like, all this work that went into developing the website and the job description and the Word document and embedding all the things and making it look great. And I'm like, son of a gun. Anyway, no clicks. And I'm like, huh. So I get on a call with the client later that week for just the weekly status update. And I was like, well, we ran the campaign on Tuesday, looked great. I just wanted to confirm that you did in fact receive those emails. And they're like, yeah, no, they all came through. Everybody got them. I'm like, okay. Well, if there were any individuals who reported the email as a phish, it would be super great for us to be able to learn about that so we could incorporate it into the reporting and highlight that win for you. And crickets on the call, like nothing. And I was like, something here seems fishy. I've never had not one person click it. I mean, I could see click the link, go to the website, not download it. Just one of those would have made me be like, no, okay, I didn't do a convincing enough job here. But there was no engagement. And I had included the individuals who were my points of contact with the target list. So they all received the email within about 10 minutes because it was like metering them out to all the people that we were targeting, plus my point of contacts. So I was like, this is weird, because they would have been like, oh yeah, we had 1 or 2 reports, or 3 or 4 people reported it, something. Even if they didn't have like an exact number, there would have been a comment. Nothing. Total crickets. Nobody had anything to say. And I was like, this is so sus. I don't even know how to explain it, but I know they tipped them off. Like, I can read them on the call. Like, we're not even looking at each other, and I know they tipped them off. And it's because they don't want a bad report. So now I've lost the element of surprise. I'm pissed. And I'm like out for blood. So at this point, I'm like, we're going to do a way better job with the next one. And so I decided on a pretext that would be just, oh man, it's so cliched, it's disgusting, but it's a dress code policy update from HR. So now instead of posing as an outside third party, I was going to pose as internal HR, but I'm like, how do I do that? Like, I can't spoof anyone in HR and pretend to be sending as them, which I've done in the past when I've been whitelisted and stuff like that. But in this case, I wanted it to keep it external enough that it wasn't like I was actually impersonating someone from HR. So I found out what software they use for onboarding. And I was able to get a template of an email from that software that was a notification of an overdue task. And I was like, let's build some urgency into this. And so I crafted an email that essentially said that they had one overdue task to accept this new 2023 HR dress code policy. And I styled the email to look exactly like the notification from the software, knowing full well that there's no reason why they would receive this notification from this software. So I'm kind of setting them up to have a way to identify this as a fish. Like, I'm setting myself up to fail by making it easy for them to determine that this is not normal. But I'm layering in that artificial time constraint of the overdue task, and then I'm playing on their curiosity, because in this case, I was fishing executives, and I was like, they're going to go, I didn't sign off on a new dress code policy. What the heck? and just, and so that's what I was counting on. So I craft this email. We set up a website that had a browser in the browser pop-up. So the website had a button that said log in with your Microsoft credentials. They would click the button and it would browser in the browser pop up and then mask with like the real URL for a Microsoft login page at the top. And we had a number of people that not only clicked on the email, but then went in to put in their actual Microsoft credentials, which we later verified on our internal pen test. And so I was like, success! And there's no reason why I should have been successful in the second one versus the first one, because I completely lost the element of surprise. We're targeting the same people. I made the pretext was much less convincing, and I made it easy for them to spot that this was not a normal practice. They shouldn't be receiving an HR notification from the onboarding software. It would be whatever platform they use for their policies. Like, I purposefully did that to prove that the first time they were messing with me. And when I sent the email out, I excluded the points of contact from receiving the email in the first wave. So the first wave was to targets exclusively. And then 15 minutes later, I sent a second campaign to just the point of contact. So they thought they all received it in the first for the same wave, but they did not. And so because the point of contacts didn't have like a heads up or have the ability to notify the rest of the team that this email was inbound, and I sent it like 4 hours after I said I was going to, I was able to get a number of people to engage with the email and not only click the link, but go to the website and put their actual credentials in. So I was like, win for me. Sorry for you.
It's a fantastic end result you got there. I guess one of the challenging things, and something, you've gone on your gut there and you knew something was wrong with that engagement. But a lot of the time in, security things, you run the scan tool, you tick the compliance checkbox, all those kind of things. But with I guess with your work with vishing and other things, how do you know when to stop? Is it just when you run out of time in the engagement, or do you, the thing about clubbing seals?
Usually it's in the scope. So they'll say, you can target this number of individuals and you have so many campaigns. With that engagement, it was really only supposed to be one campaign, but I was like, no. And so I kind of over delivered, and I kind of, I kind of shifted things time wise that we had allocated the project in a way that made it a little tough for me. But at the same time, I was determined that we were going to do a good job. And I felt like a zero wasn't going to be acceptable from the client's perspective. And I also felt like I needed vindication. So typically there's some gray area where, I can decide to do an additional campaign, or we can adjust a pretext midway through. And usually I'll explain to clients that, any information I learn during the course of, say, a phone phishing engagement, I will then use later in other calls. I'm not going to exclusively stick to a script that pretends like it doesn't know that I just learned these 6 things over the course of these 12 calls. And so that kind of helps me emulate an actual attack, because I don't think any attacker would ignore information that they found during the course of their, different layers of human and OSINT. And for the sake of red teaming, usually it's not so strict in the way that the engagements are scoped, because we're trying to very stealthily compromise an organization. Whereas with pen testing, it's very noisy, and our pen testers will just go in there and like try to break everything and make a lot of noise, and they don't care about being stealthy. And those engagements are much more strictly defined. Like, these are the times we're testing, these are the things we're doing, and these are the expectations up front. And we make every effort to communicate to our clients every step of the way what we're doing, how we're doing it, what we found, and try to keep those things so that they don't feel like they're unaware of what we're doing or how we're progressing. And I think that that element of communication is what's essential, because if I get through a week of testing and I'm like, I'm struggling with this, or we're just absolutely, it's just carnage, then we can adjust and try to make the engagement more meaningful to the client. I don't think that, say, for example, in the context of that medical research facility, if I just kept honing IT help desk people, that would have been beneficial for them. So I was like, how can we use this time more effectively? And they're like, well, okay, like, I think you've proved your point on the IT help desk. What about HR? And this is interesting to me. On this engagement, the only person that challenged me from that medical research facility was a woman in HR. And most people think, oh, HR, they don't know anything about security. But I will tell you this: HR people are very process driven. They are very focused on the correct procedure and the policy to do things. And so when I called and I said, oh, yeah, I'm so and so from, this property management company, and your employee has applied for an apartment, so I'm just calling to do an employment verification, she immediately quipped to me, we don't do those over the phone. You're going to have to send me an email. And I was like, whew, I wasn't expecting that. So I was like, oh, great. Okay. Well, what email address do I send that to? I had to like adjust my tactics. And so I took down the email address and I pretended I was going to go ahead and send the email. And I waited like 4 or 5 hours. And I was like, I'll just call all these executives that I'm supposed to test as well in the meantime, and I'll come back to this, because she humbled the crap out of me. And so I waited, and I was like, well, I'm going to call the same IT or the same HR help desk number again and hope I get someone else. And sure enough, I got the same woman, and I'm like, oh, geez. So I, like, just on the spot, I said, hey, hi, we talked earlier today and you asked me to send my employment verification request to that email address. I did that. Did you not get it? And she goes, oh, let me check. No, what was the employee name again? Yeah, no, I don't have anything for that. And I said, oh, weird. I wonder if it got trapped in your junk mail or something. I said, yeah, I sent it earlier, like right after we spoke. And she's like, yeah, no, I don't have anything. She goes, why don't you stay on the phone with me and send it again? And I was like, gosh darn it. Like, damn it. So I was like, oh, well, this will just take a second. So I'm like trying to build this like artificial time constraint, like just answer this one question. And so she's like, okay. I'm like, I'm honestly, I said, because I'm like, I'm trying to play to her like cynical, like HR people don't like dealing with employees after they've been doing it for a while. They get kind of bitter. And so I was like, maybe if I can like form an alliance, like I'm sick of dealing with people too with her, then she will empathize with me and we can do this together. So I was like, oh, I just need to confirm that she does actually work there. And she like laughed and she goes, oh, okay. I said, I was like, great, she's into it. And I was like, you wouldn't believe how many people lie on these applications. And she's like, oh, I know. And she jumps into a couple stories of her own about people fibbing on their, applications for working there and stuff like that. And I was like, we're in. And so then I'm like, do you think you could just, let me know if she does actually work there? And so I had her open up the system that she was working out of, pull up that person's name, and then I was like, it says here she makes 650,000. And I wanted to give her like a preposterous number. And of course there are folks that work there that made around that because they're like super tenured and all that other good stuff, but this was like a lower level research person, and there's no way that they would be making more than like 60. And so she was like, what? And then she did that thing that people do where they can't not correct you. And so she's like, no, she makes 63. I was like, oh, she put an extra zero on this application. And then asked her a couple more questions like, does she actually live at this address? And then I have this social, is that correct? No, it's this. And so I walked her through all these things and just breaking down that initial barrier and then forming that relationship where we were on the same page, finding that commonality, and then escalating slowly into like the more sensitive information that I wanted to gain from her, and using that, this is what I have, what do you have, correction, but also having her, I mean, if I just said, hi, can I have the social security number for this employee? She would have been like, no. And so figuring out how to maneuver around the process and then build a rapport and then slowly creep up to that sensitive piece of PII that I needed to gain as my trophy in the engagement was something that it took the whole day for me to get to that point with her. So it was one of those things where just the persistence and the inability to know when to quit is something that's pretty important when you're doing this kind of work, whether it's more, technically focused or with humans. But yeah, I don't know when to quit. Yeah, there are a few. So, on a personal side of things, being able to balance being a mother to four children and working full time is probably the thing that I struggle with most because I feel like, either I'm failing as a mom or I'm failing as an employee, like at any one moment during the day. So that's tough. So balancing now that things are going back to more normalcy and more physical pen tests are going to happen and travel and all those things, like I'm really concerned about how I'm going to manage that. And I have an extremely supportive spouse, but I also we are partners, like 50-50 on everything. We've got 4 kids and we split things pretty fairly down the middle. And so either one of us leaving for any amount of time puts strain on the other. So that's something that I'm really concerned with. And then on the career side of things, I really want to step into a more an area where I can be more comfortable on the technical side of pen testing. And so I'm working towards certification to achieve that. I've tried several training houses. I've tried a bunch of different types of certifications and felt like I didn't really learn anything other than hacking a test to get the right answers. And so now I'm more focused on not only learning the things, but applying those practically, and just using the skills I have to solve problems to prove that I know this stuff. So, yeah, I'm a little apprehensive about that in the future because I think that that's a direction that I need to go in to get more comfortable on the technical side.
And maybe working with HR teams as well.
Yeah, man, HR teams, yikes.
I've heard every sob story.
I'm telling you what, HR ladies are scary. They are very, very process driven and they have no problem telling you to F off. Wow, man, there are so many people. Um, one group or individual. I would say if I had to highlight one individual, I'll start with the group first. I'm going to do this backwards. So, one group would be my consulting team at Critical Insight. They just they gave me the opportunity of a lifetime. They welcomed in basically a non-entity as far as information security was concerned and trusted me to upskill very quickly into performing assessments and doing that work. So they gave me my first information security job and gave me the opportunity to grow, and to learn on the job. And I will be forever indebted to them. So tremendous amount of gratitude. I'm still in touch with a lot of those folks, and I consider them like a brotherhood. They're all dudes, but they're like my additional brothers, and they've always been so great. Just not only in allowing me to grow at my own rate and helping me find the right resources and giving me the opportunity of the job and learning on it, but then being supportive when I needed backup, whether that was, technical knowledge and experience when talking to a client, or whether that was me back channeling to them in a Teams direct message to say, I think this client needs to hear what I'm saying from a man. Can you just tell him this? Because that happens, unfortunately, more often than they think. So, yeah, to a group, absolutely, it would be to my critical insight team, specifically the consultants that I worked with there and the leadership. And then as far as like an individual, I would not be where I am today were it not for Jason E. Street. That man not only has, trailblazed a way for social engineers to be, validated and accepted in this community as information security professionals, but he is the one who made the introduction of me to the Bishop Fox team. So I will be forever grateful to him for everything that he's done for the community and for me specifically. So I would say the best places to connect with me would probably be at this point LinkedIn. That's where the majority of my professional podcasting and other things will probably be shared first. Um, things that I do and collaborate with Bishop Fox to create will absolutely be on LinkedIn first. Um, Twitter is always great for as long as it survives. Don't hesitate to connect with me on Twitter. And then recently I have joined Mastodon, and that has been a really fun community to be engaged with. It reminds me a lot, excuse me, Mastodon reminds me a lot of the old MIRC chat days, just in that it's a fully distributed, open source platform where you've got all this ability to create your own communities. So I landed in the Mastodon instance that's infosec.exchange, and Jerry is the administrator there. He's been doing a fantastic job scaling up. I think he went, and this is at the time of recording, maybe accurate, but he went from less than 700 users to over 7,000 in the matter of like a week. So he's been scaling up at like a ridiculous rate. And things have just been really fun because you have this, like this, I don't know, like there's no hierarchy. It's all humans that are equal. And there's been a lot of sharing of real, you know, just real emotion and information and resources and collaboration and people supporting each other. And I feel like it's just so much less toxic than some of the other platforms because it's not filled with all this noise and this content that you're forced to see. So yes, you can find me on Mastodon. It's just at Alethe, so at ALETHE. And then you can find me on Twitter at Alethe Denis because somebody else who hasn't used their account since 2017 took Alethe, and I'm still mad about it. And then at LinkedIn, it's just /IN/Alethe, and you can find me there and connect with me there.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for sharing those links and some guys to those resources there. And thank you for sharing your journey from Soundgarden CDs to social engineering critical infrastructure. It's been a really interesting conversation. Some really great lessons there. And I think we've now made a lot of people think about going from, cybersecurity and pen testing into sales perhaps there, which might not be a bad thing.
Perhaps. Sales engineer is a great opportunity.
Absolutely. Carl's just been messaging me about those very opportunities. So who knows? Maybe we'll all change careers by the end of this podcast. But thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you to Karl, my co-host, super producer Jesse, and Sarah, who makes this possible on our side of things. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.